Whitney Zeller stared at the untouched glass of water across from her. The ice nearly melted, the lemon slice wilted. She checked the time again, 7:39. He was supposed to be here at 7 sharp. Her blind date had ditched her. The thought hit harder than she expected. She'd spent 2 hours getting ready, even bought a new dress not green, thank God, and let her best friend talk her into putting herself out there again. Now here she was, sitting alone at an upscale Italian restaurant in the middle of Manhattan like the sad punchline of a rom-com. The waiter passed by for the 3rd time. "Still waiting, miss," Whitney swallowed her pride. "Yeah, no, I think I'll just, sorry I'm late, babe, traffic was insane." A deep voice cut through the air behind her, smooth and confident. She turned, startled, as a tall man in a tailored navy suit slid into the seat across from her like he owned the place. He had dark hair, slightly tousled, a strong jawline, and eyes that didn't look away once they met hers. "I'm Damon," he said under his breath, barely audible to the waiter who now stood staring at them in confusion. "Play along for a second," Whitney blinked. "What?" The waiter raised an eyebrow. "Would you two like to start with drinks?" Damon smiled easily. "Yes, she'll have a glass of red something bold, and I'll take the same." The waiter nodded, clearly relieved, and walked off. Whitney leaned in, eyes narrowed. "What are you doing? Who are you?" "I was sitting at the bar, saw you sitting here alone for over 30 minutes. Figured I'd save you from the pity stares and the awkward exit." She blinked. "You just decided to pretend to be my date. You looked like you needed a win," he said, his voice lower now, softer. "And I figured you could use someone to sit across from. I won't make it weird. If you want me to leave, I will." She looked at him again, his confidence, the way he didn't flinch under her stare. His suit looked expensive, but he didn't act like it, and somehow she didn't feel uneasy. She felt curious. Whitney sat back in her chair. "Okay, Damon, let's pretend." "But you're paying for dinner," he grinned. "Fair enough." By the time their entrees arrived, Whitney had forgotten all about the jerk who stood her up. Damon was funny in a dry, clever way. He asked questions, real ones, and listened, which was more than she could say for most of the guys she dated. She told him about her job at the publishing house, her 2-year streak of failed dates, and the time she accidentally wore 2 different shoes to an interview. He laughed genuinely, not politely, and told her about growing up in Brooklyn, his love for old films, and how he once got arrested at 17 for sneaking into an abandoned church to take photos of the stained glass. "I'm not a criminal, I swear," he added, sipping his wine. "I just liked beautiful things." Whitney tilted her head. "Is that your line?" "No, but if it works, I'll take credit." She laughed harder than she had in weeks. After dessert, because Damon insisted she try the tiramisu, and he was right. It was incredible. He walked her out to the street. The city buzzed around them, yellow cabs and honking horns, the scent of roasted peanuts from a nearby cart. "So," he said, hands in his pockets, "did I ruin your night or save it?" She looked up at him, her breath fogging in the cool air. "You definitely saved it." "Good," he said, then hesitated. "Can I see you again? For real this time, no pretending." Whitney didn't answer right away. Her heart was racing a little too fast. "You don't even know me." "I know you have a crooked laugh and you order your pasta like you're afraid of carbs," he said. "I know you hate being stood up but still show up anyway. I know you're smart and honest, and I'd really like to learn the rest." Her mouth parted slightly. "Are you always this forward?" "Only when I meet someone who makes me forget anyone else exists." She stared at him, breath stuck in her chest. "You're serious?" Damon nodded. "Dead serious." She opened her mouth, then closed it, then shook her head with a laugh. "Okay, Damon. One real date. Tomorrow, she said, smiling. He stepped back, a satisfied glint in his eyes. "I'll pick you up at 7. She raised an eyebrow. "You don't even have my address." "I will," he said simply. "I have my ways." And then he turned and disappeared into the night, slipping into a sleek black car that had been waiting at the curb. Whitney caught a glimpse of the driver in a crisp suit, the way the door was opened for Damon like he was someone important. She frowned, watching as the car pulled away. Who exactly was Damon? She didn't know. but she was going to find out. The next evening, Whitney stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the silver earring that kept catching in her hair. Her apartment smelled faintly of jasmine from the candle burning near the window, and the nervous flutter in her stomach hadn't stopped since 5 o'clock. She hadn't given Damon her address. She hadn't even exchanged contact info with him. Yet at exactly 7, a gentle knock sounded at her door. Her heart jumped. She opened it to find him standing there with a bouquet of white peonies and a quiet tilt to his head like he was gauging her reaction. He wore a slate-gray coat over a black button-down and dark trousers, his hair slightly damp from the light drizzle outside. "These felt like you," he said. Whitney accepted the flowers, the scent soft and clean. "Peonies are hard to find this time of year." "I called around," he replied simply. She hesitated. "How did you know where I live?" Damon stepped back slightly. "I asked the maitre d' where you'd made the reservation from. You booked it under your name. I traced it to your publishing house and called in a favor." Her brows lifted. "You called my office." "I didn't ask for anything personal, just said I wanted to return something you left. Figured if you didn't want to see me again, you'd slam the door in my face." Instead, she stepped aside. "Give me a second to grab my coat." As they descended the stairs to the street, she expected him to hail a cab. Instead, a sleek, obsidian-colored town car pulled up to the curb. The driver exited immediately and opened the door. Whitney paused. "You have a driver?" Damon didn't answer right away. "I don't like to talk on the phone while driving. It's a habit that's stuck." The interior of the car was warm, the leather seats buttery soft. The city passed by in gold-lit blurs as they drove, the rain tapping gently against the windows. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere I used to go to think," he said. The car pulled into a narrow alley near the East River, where a hidden elevator led them into a converted industrial building. As the doors opened, Whitney stepped out into a glass-walled loft overlooking the water, the Brooklyn Bridge lit behind it like a painting. A long table had been set for two, candles flickering down its length, soft jazz humming beneath the sounds of the city. "This place is yours?" she asked, eyes scanning the open space, the exposed brick and brushed steel. "I bought it a few years ago." "Don't use it for much anymore." She turned to him. "Why bring me here?" "Because I wanted to talk to you without the noise," he said, pulling out her chair, "and I thought you might like the view." She sat slowly, watching him as he poured wine into crystal glasses. "What do you do, Damon?" He didn't flinch. "I help restructure failing companies, mostly tech. I invest, rebuild, and exit once they're profitable." "So you're a venture capitalist." He gave a small nod. "Among other things. And you own this loft and a driver." She took a sip of wine. "So you're a millionaire?" "Technically, yes," he replied. "But I never lead with that. It tends to attract people who care more about the number than the person." Whitney leaned back. "Why me then?" "Because you didn't ask about any of that last night. You didn't Google me. You didn't even seem interested in who I was. You were just there, present." She looked at him carefully. "You're used to people wanting something from you." "Almost always," he said, his voice quieter now. "And I don't trust easily." The candlelight danced across the table, catching in the hollow of her collarbone as she tilted her head. "But you trust me." "I did something last year," he said slowly. "Cut someone off, a partner I'd known since college. He tried to take a company from under me." "Lied to my face." Her eyes narrowed. "What happened?" "I let him go, bought him out at triple value just to make it disappear, but the betrayal stuck." Whitney didn't reach for sympathy. Instead, she asked, "So what makes you think I won't do the same?" "I don't," he said. "But I'm here anyway." Their food arrived a moment later, roasted sea bass with lemon risotto, and a dish of charred broccolini that smelled like garlic and olive oil. The chef, whom Damon addressed by name, placed each plate with care and then disappeared silently. Whitney took a bite and closed her eyes. "This is unreal." "Good," Damon said, watching her. "You deserve something good." She lowered her fork. "You talk like you've been watching me for years." "Just 24 hours, he said. "But it's been enough to know I want another 24. Whitney didn't answer. Instead, she stood and walked to the window, the lights of the city stretching endlessly in front of her. Damon followed, stopping beside her. "You ever have nights that change things?" she asked softly. "Yes," he said, "this is one of them." She turned to face him. "I don't want to be a distraction or some story you try to rewrite because you're tired of people lying to you." "You're not a distraction," he said. "You're the point," she exhaled, her breath fogging the glass. "Let me show you what it looks like when someone chooses you without condition," Damon said. Whitney didn't speak, but she didn't step away either. And in the silence that followed, something shifted, not just desire, but trust. Tentative, fragile, and real. The following week unfolded like a dream Whitney didn't realize she'd been waiting to wake up from. Damon wasn't just attentive, he was intentional. Their second real date turned into a third, then a fourth. But each time, it wasn't about extravagance. It was the way he paid attention. How he remembered she didn't like strong cologne and had switched to a subtle sandalwood. How he waited for her to finish speaking without ever interrupting. How he made space for her to exist fully without shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. Still, she couldn't ignore the undercurrent of suspicion threading through her thoughts. "You're careful," she said one night as they walked along a quiet street in Soho, the pavement slick from afternoon rain. "But not with me." "Why?" Damon glanced at her, his jaw tight. "Because I'm tired of holding everything with a closed fist. I either trust or I don't. I've decided to trust you." "You don't know everything about me," she said, stopping near a shuttered bookstore. "I don't need to," he replied, "but I'm learning." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she ran her fingers along the spine of a book displayed behind the glass. "I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop, like this isn't real. It's real." Damon's voice was steady. "But if you're waiting for a reason to run, I won't stop you." "I just won't be the one to give it." Whitney turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You're not what I expected." He stepped closer. "What did you expect?" Someone polished, controlled, charming for sport. "I can be all those things," he said, "but not with you." "With you, I just want to be honest." She looked up at him, and for the first time her guard dipped fully. "Then tell me something you haven't told anyone else." Damon hesitated. "My father died when I was 21, heart attack. He was supposed to walk me through my first company acquisition, but he was gone before I signed the papers. I still ask myself what he'd do, every time." Whitney's voice softened. "I'm sorry. I don't say it for sympathy." "You asked for truth." They stood like that for a long moment, the city pulsing around them but not between them. Then she reached for his hand. "Let's keep walking." It wasn't just dates after that. Damon started showing up quietly, without spectacle. He waited for her outside her office with coffee when he knew she had back-to-back meetings. He sent a rare first-edition novel to her desk with a handwritten note that simply said, "For the editor who makes every word count." But the moment that truly shook her came unexpectedly. She had just wrapped up a chaotic Friday when her phone rang. Not Damon, her boss. A manuscript had come in from an author they'd been trying to sign for over a year. Whitney had been promised the project, but now it was being reassigned to someone else. No explanation. She was stunned. She didn't call Damon. She didn't want to seem dramatic. Instead, she stopped by a small bar near the Flatiron building, slid into a booth, and stared at the untouched glass of wine in front of her. "Did he take it from you?" Damon's voice came from across the booth, startling her. He was already sitting down, his coat barely unbuttoned. She stared at him. "How did you know I was here?" "I checked your location. You shared it with me last night, remember?" She'd forgotten. "I didn't want you to see me like this." "Why?" "Because I'm not always composed. I get angry. I cry sometimes. I don't always know how to let things go." "I don't want the curated version of you, Whitney," he said. "I want all of it." She stared at him, her voice shaking slightly. "They handed it to someone else. No reason. No warning. Do you think it was personal?" "I don't know," she whispered, "but it felt like I didn't matter." Damon didn't push. He simply reached for her hand across the table. "You matter. I'm not used to someone saying that and meaning it. Get used to it." She looked away quickly, blinking hard. "What if I'm not enough for your world?" He leaned forward. Whitney, you think I care about boardrooms and profits and stock trends. I've built a world I can walk away from, but I can't walk away from you. She finally met his gaze. You say that like you've already decided. I have. It was terrifying how quickly things shifted after that. 3 days later, Whitney was called into a meeting with the publisher's senior board. She walked in expecting a reprimand or a cold explanation. Instead, she found her boss pale and tight-lipped, and the board chair thanking her for her outstanding contributions and offering her the manuscript back plus a promotion. When she asked what changed, no one gave her a direct answer. That night, she confronted Damon in his uptown penthouse, a space she hadn't seen until that moment. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a Steinway in the corner, and a city skyline that looked like painted fire. You interfered, she said. He didn't deny it. I made a call. You said you wouldn't be the one to give me a reason to run. I didn't pull strings, he said evenly. I told them the truth, that letting you walk would be the biggest mistake they'd make this year. Her breath caught. You had no right. I had every right to protect someone I care about. She stared at him, hands clenched. You can't fix me. You can't buy my dignity. I'm not trying to. Then what are you trying to do? Damon stepped closer. I'm trying to show you that you don't have to fight every battle alone, that someone can stand beside you without taking control. The silence was thick. I don't want to be rescued, she said. Then let me be your ally, not your savior. She looked around his place, opulence and restraint in equal measure, this man who had everything and still wanted her. You terrify me, she said finally. Good, he replied, because loving someone should feel like standing on a ledge. But I promise I won't let you fall. Whitney took a shaky breath and didn't step back. The first thing Whitney noticed when she stepped into the gallery was the silence, not the kind that felt empty or cold but reverent, like the hush before music began. The walls, matte white and towering, held only one exhibit, a series of black and white photographs, each one framed in brushed steel and bathed in soft amber light. She recognized the space immediately, though she hadn't been here in years. It had once been a derelict printing warehouse. Now, it looked like something out of an art collector's dream. Damon stood near the far wall, talking quietly to a woman in a tailored jumpsuit who handed him a clipboard, and then disappeared through a side door. He turned just as Whitney approached, his expression unreadable for a moment, then something in his eyes softened. You came, he said. She glanced around. You didn't tell me you were an artist. I'm not, he replied. I'm a man who used to take photographs when he didn't know how to say what he felt. Her gaze shifted to the nearest frame. It was a picture of a woman standing at the edge of a subway platform, her hair caught mid-motion. There was something haunting in the way her eyes looked past the camera, unaware she was being captured. These are yours, she asked. He nodded. From before the first company, before the boardrooms. Before the money. Why now? Because I wanted you to see me without the layers. She moved slowly through the exhibit, passing images of children laughing in Harlem alleys, a man asleep in a sun-splashed laundromat, a street preacher holding a sign that read, "We are not forgotten." Each photo felt intimate, unflinching. How long did you take these? She murmured. 6 years, he said. I'd go out before sunrise, shoot until the light changed, then develop them in a darkroom I built in my closet. I never showed them to anyone. Whitney turned to him. So why now? Because I didn't want you to fall in love with the man I became. I wanted you to know the one I used to be. Her breath caught. You think I'm falling in love with you? I think you already have, he said gently. I also think you're scared of what that means. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the final photo. It was different from the rest, color, not black and white. It showed a table set for two, a single glass of red wine in focus, the other empty. The angle was familiar. This is from the restaurant, she said, voice low. Our first night. He stepped beside her. I took it after you left. I'd forgotten my phone at the bar. When I came back in, the table was still there. So I asked the maitre d' if he could give me 5 minutes. You took this that same night? I didn't know why at the time, I just knew something had shifted. Whitney turned to face him. "You planned all this." "No," he said. "But I knew the moment I met you that I'd do anything to keep you looking at me that way." She felt emotion rise in her chest, sharp and sudden. "What if I can't give you what you're used to? I don't come from your world. I don't know how to blend in." "I don't want you to blend in," Damon said. "I want you to be the one thing in my life that doesn't match the furniture." She laughed, a wet sound that escaped before she could stop it. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." "But true," he said. Her laughter faded, and silence stretched between them, full and electric. "I've never had someone choose me without needing something from me," she said quietly. "I don't need anything from you, Whitney. I want things. I want morning coffee and your messy ponytail. I want to argue about movie endings and hear you read lines out loud from books you love. I want your worst days and your best ones, but no, you're not something I survive, you're someone I choose." Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't blink them away this time. "I love you," Damon said. "Not because you need saving, not because you're different. But because when I'm with you, I remember who I am and who I want to be." She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "I love you too, even when I tried not to." He reached for her hand, pulled her gently toward the center of the gallery. "Then let me prove it." From the side door, soft music began to play a string quartet, live and unseen, the notes echoing off the high ceilings. Without a word, Damon wrapped an arm around her waist and guided her into a slow dance beneath the spotlight of his memories. They moved in silence, her head resting against his chest, his hand firm at the small of her back. The world outside faded into static. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was bracing for disappointment. She felt safe, seen, wanted. After several minutes, he stopped dancing and looked down at her. "I bought this building," he said. "Not tonight. Years ago, I never knew what I was saving it for. And now I know. I want to turn it into something permanent, a space that means something. A place we build together." Whitney's brows lifted. "Together, gallery, bookstore, community space, whatever you want to call it. Your name on the lease next to mine, I want your voice in the blueprints." Her lip trembled. "You're serious?" "I've never been more," she didn't answer with words. Instead, she rose to her toes and kissed him soft and certain, not because she needed to convince herself, but because she didn't have to anymore. Later that week, they stood before the city clerk in a quiet, private ceremony arranged without fanfare. Whitney wore a sapphire dress with sleeves that brushed her wrists. Damon wore the same gray coat from their second date. They exchanged vows in front of a single witness, his sister, who hugged Whitney so tightly afterward she nearly cried again. No one posted it. No one tweeted it, but it was real. A few months later, the gallery reopened, this time with a new sign on the front, the Zeller Hale Collective. Inside, the photography remained. But now there were books, readings, events for young artists. And in the back office, Whitney sat behind a desk strewn with manuscripts. Damon curled on the couch reading the latest one she'd passed to him. He looked up and smiled. "I still can't believe a blind date brought me to you." She smiled back. "I didn't even make it to the date." He stood, crossed the space between them, and kissed her forehead. "No," he said, "but you made it to me. And that's all that matters." The late spring air rolled through the French doors of the gallery's back office, carrying the faint hum of a jazz trio playing outside in the courtyard. Whitney stood barefoot on the cool, polished wood floors, watching as guests wandered through the space beyond. Glasses of champagne in hand, laughter soft and contented beneath the music. Tonight wasn't just another event. It was the formal launch of the gallery's new Initiative, a mentorship program for young writers and photographers from underserved communities. Whitney had spent weeks organizing it, working late hours over scattered applications and calls with donors. Damon had stepped back, not out of disinterest, but out of trust. He knew when to lead and when to let her take the reins. From the doorway, he watched her now, arms crossed loosely, the top of his shirt unbuttoned, sleeves rolled. He hadn't said much during the event. He didn't need to. The way his eyes followed her was louder than any speech. "You should be out there," he said, stepping inside. I will, she said, adjusting a folder on the desk. I just needed a second to breathe. He walked to her, slipping a hand around her waist. They're all talking about you, I know. And I'm trying not to overthink what that means. They're saying you're the first person to make this place feel alive. Whitney glanced toward the open doors again. I didn't expect this, not all of it, not so soon. Neither did I, Damon said. But I've stopped questioning things that feel right. She leaned into him, letting her head rest briefly against his shoulder. You make it easier to believe in things again. I don't want to just help you believe, he said. I want to be the reason you never stop. Before she could answer, a knock sounded on the hallway wall. Damon's sister poked her head in, a twinkle in her eyes. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but your keynote's in 5 minutes and the mayor's here. Thought you might want to know before he starts wandering through the archives unescorted. Whitney laughed. I'm coming. Once alone again, Damon reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small navy velvet box. He held it for a second, then placed it gently on the desk. What's that? Whitney asked, brow raised. Something I've been carrying for a while, he said. I didn't want to ask you the usual way, not with a spotlight, not with a crowd. I wanted it to happen here, in the place you built. She opened the box slowly. Inside was a delicate gold ring, uniquely shaped, with a single oval sapphire nestled between 2 tiny diamonds. It wasn't flashy, it was intentional. I know we're already married, Damon said, but I never gave you this. No proposal, no moment. And I think you deserve one. Her eyes didn't leave his. You want to do it now? I want to do it right, he said. Whitney Zeller Hale, will you marry me again? Not because the world expects it, not because it's convenient, but because I want to keep choosing you, every day. In every version of our story. She reached for his hand, her voice low and certain. Yes, 100 times yes. Outside, applause erupted as the trio finished their set and someone called out her name. She grinned, slipping the ring onto her finger. They're waiting. Let them, Damon said, pulling her in for a kiss that was slow and certain and full of everything they hadn't said. Later that night, after the last guest had left and the lights had dimmed, they lay in bed in the penthouse, the city a quiet glow beyond the windows. Whitney's head rested against Damon's chest as he absently traced patterns on her back. Do you ever think about who you were before all this? She asked. All the time, he said, but I don't miss him. She shifted to look at him. Why not? Because he didn't have you. She smiled, the kind of smile that held no hesitation. I think we could disappear and still be okay. We won't disappear, he said. We'll evolve. They spent the summer traveling not to exotic islands or 5-star resorts, but to hidden bookstores in quiet towns, to photography exhibits in cities they'd never visited, to writers' conferences where Whitney was invited as a guest speaker. Damon always sat in the back, never drawing attention, but his eyes never left her. By autumn, the mentorship program had expanded. A second gallery space opened across the bridge, run by one of the first students Whitney had taken on. Damon had returned to the boardroom occasionally, but only on his terms. He no longer needed the noise of acquisition to feel powerful. He'd found something better. One afternoon, Whitney stood in the courtyard of the gallery with a cup of tea, watching as a small group of children sketched in the sunlight. The sound of laughter, of pages turning, drifted around her. Damon approached from behind, holding a thick envelope. What's that? She asked. He handed it to her. A letter from the foundation. They want to fund your expansion nationwide. She blinked. You didn't pull strings? No strings, he said. Just reputation. Yours. She opened the envelope and read silently, her lips parting. They want me to lead it. I know, she looked up. This changes everything. It adds to it, he corrected. But nothing changes us. That night, they hosted a private dinner at the gallery, just close friends, staff, and a few of the program's first graduates. Damon gave a short speech and Whitney followed, her voice steady and warm. When the candles burned low and the plates were cleared, he took her hand and whispered, "Let's dance." There was no music this time. Just the echo of their steps across the floor, and the certainty that they had built something real not just between them but around them. They didn't need promises, they had each other, and it was more than enough.